There's this one number that's causing a huge debate in the Bitcoin world right now, 5%. To some people, it's a launch pad. To others, it's a total danger zone. But what does it actually mean? Well, it turns out that depends entirely on who you ask. So ever since those new Bitcoin ETFs hit the market, you've got this fascinating split. On one side, you have crypto executives saying 5% is the absolute minimum you should own. And on the other, you've got the big Wall Street banks saying 5% is the absolute maximum. Same number, totally opposite advice. So what gives? Let's dig in. Okay, so first, let's tackle the argument coming from inside the crypto world. Their whole pitch? It's not really about managing risk in the way you'd normally think. It's actually about managing the risk of regret. Good old-fashioned FOMO. And here's the Coinbase CEO, Brian Armstrong, basically putting a stake in the ground. He's saying the real risk isn't that Bitcoin's price swings around like crazy. Nope. The real risk is being left in the dust if this thing really takes off. And this really gets to the core of their whole philosophy. It's this idea they call asymmetric upside. Basically, the thinking goes like this. Sure, you could lose your entire investment. It could go to zero. But the potential gain, it's so huge. We're talking 10x, 20x, maybe even more, that it's a bet they think is absolutely worth taking. The potential reward just dwarfs the risk. And here's the math behind that thinking. If you're someone who believes in these big projections, like Bitcoin hitting $1 million by 2030, well then a pretty small allocation today could absolutely explode in value. From their point of view, not having a piece of that is the biggest gamble of all. All right, let's flip the coin and look at the other side. How are the traditional finance folks, Wall Street, handling this? For them, it is not about FOMO. It's all about one thing, building guardrails. Just look at this list. We're talking about the biggest names in the game: Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, BlackRock. And what's wild is that they've all kind of landed in the same spot. They're telling their clients, yeah, Bitcoin can have a place in your portfolio, but a small one. They're capping it in the low single digits, period. And that's because their number one job, their whole reason for existing, is downside protection. See, for a wealth advisor, the worst thing isn't missing a big rally. The absolute career-ending nightmare is having to explain to a client why their life savings got wiped out because of one super volatile bet. It's all about risk management, first and foremost. And hey, this isn't just a theory. A recent survey of financial advisors shows this is exactly what's happening in the real world. A huge majority, 83% of advisors who use crypto, are keeping it under that 5% mark. It's pretty clear the institutional world sees that number as a hard ceiling. So, okay, we've got two totally different ways of looking at this, but how on earth are they both using the exact same number? Well, the secret is hiding in one little word, a word that changes all the math. It all comes down to the denominator. See, when a crypto exec says 5%, they're usually talking about 5% of your total net worth. But when a financial advisor says 5%, they're talking about 5% of your investable portfolio. And trust me, for most people, those are two wildly different numbers. Okay, let's use an example to make this super clear. Imagine a family with a pretty solid net worth, say $2 million. Now, a huge piece of that is probably their house, right? Maybe some retirement funds, stuff they can't easily touch. So even though they're worth $2 million on paper, the actual cash they have in a brokerage account, the money they can use to buy stuff like stocks or Bitcoin ETFs, might only be $500,000. Okay, so now let's apply that Crypto XX rule. 5% of their $2 million net worth. Simple math. That's $100,000 to put into Bitcoin. Seems straightforward, right? But where does that 100 grand actually come from? And this right here is the $1 million question, or, well, the $100,000 question. That money isn't coming out of their home's value. It has to come from their liquid, ready-to-invest cash. So what does that 100 grand look like as a piece of that pie? And boom, there it is. All of a sudden, that reasonable 5% of your net worth is now a massive 20% chunk of your actual investment portfolio. That is a huge concentrated bet. It's a level of risk that almost no financial advisor on the planet would recommend. And that, my friends, is the denominator trap. So what you start to realize is that this isn't about one side being right and the other being wrong. They're just speaking two totally different languages. They're playing different games, but using the same number on the jersey. For the crypto world, that 5% is a floor. It's the minimum you need to get in the game and have a shot at those massive potential gains. But for the Wall Street advisor, that 5% is a ceiling. It's a safety net,
a hard limit to make sure that if the floor gives out, it doesn't bring your entire financial future crashing down with it.
You know, in the end, that 5% has become a sort of Rorschach test for investors. The number itself is neutral. What it really shows you is what the person saying it cares about most. Are they trying to capture every last bit of upside, or are they trying to protect against the worst possible downside? And that's really the whole takeaway here. So the next time you hear someone throw around that 5% rule for Bitcoin, stop and ask yourself one simple question. Are they talking about a floor or a ceiling? Because figuring that out tells you everything you need to know.